And they went, and they built houses, and they planted gardens, and they sought the welfare of the community in which they found themselves. And they prayed to the Lord. They prayed to the Lord on its behalf. A couple of weeks ago on Wednesday night, we talked about the parable of the talents and how the master left and gave his 3 servants dominion over some of his assets. And he gave the servants authority to do with them. When he returned, do with them to increase them. When he returned, he asked them, "What have you done with what I left for you? I expected you to use what was given to you to make this a better place." Well, the revelation that we see here in Jeremiah's passage is that God has that same expectation for all of us, no matter where we find ourselves. He expects us to make it a better place. And we just cannot say it. We cannot say, well, we're just temporarily here. If we live down in Florida, we couldn't say, well, I'm a snowbird from New York. I'm just here for the winter. Our roots are somewhere else. You can't do that. Nor can you say, I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't feel like it. You just can't do that. It comes to us with biblical authority as a mandate. What did God say? Build houses, plant vineyards, seek the welfare of the community where you find yourself. And that final phrase, and pray to your Lord on its behalf. There are so many other biblical mandates that have to do with our obligation to care for God's kingdom. And they all pretty much say exactly the same thing. They all say, plant your feet, dig in, get over the surroundings, go to work. If you don't remember anything else from this morning's message, please remember this one sentence. You know that if you look hard in the Bible, you'll have to search and search to find commands about what to believe. You really will. But you'll have no trouble avoiding commands in the Bible about what we are supposed to do. God makes it very clear what we are supposed to do. We are here to dig in. We are here to be a part of the community in which we find ourselves. And we're here to invest in that community and to build those houses and to plant those gardens and to seek the welfare of the city. Now, I know you understand that this dig in, plant houses, build homes, seek the welfare is symbolic. What God is saying to us, work. Work for the kingdom. Work for God. Do what He wants us to do. And He wants us to keep doing it regardless of where we find ourselves and regardless of our circumstances. Several years ago, I read a book by a guy named Lawrence Hayworth. And the name of that book is called The Good City. And it's very interesting. He's a sociologist, and he says there are 2 parts to a good city. The first part is opportunity. The second part is community. You can't have a good city with only one of these. You have to have both. And he said that's what's wrong with so many American cities, is that they have been used only for opportunity, but they have neglected the community. People, think about your history and what you know about when migrants flooded into our country. People have always come to the city for opportunity. From the very beginning, they came to do what? They came to make a living. They came to make money. They feel that if they could live someplace else in the world, they would, but they can't because this is where they can find work and make money. Cities are the economic engines that move this country, and they attract people for that reason. And that's all exactly right. They attract both rich, they attract poor. They attract indigenous people from America. Cities attract all nationalities. Cities attract all races. Everybody comes together in the city for economic reasons, to get a job, to get what's there. And for many Americans, unfortunately, that's all that the city is good for. They feel no obligation to the welfare, to contribute to the welfare of the city. They take everything they can out of the city, but they put nothing back into the city. Well, the truth is the city does exist for opportunity, but cities will become uninhabitable if they don't also create community. If they don't make us have concern for each other and for those who live next to us and across the street from us and close to us, and if we don't realize that really the city is the world. That's who the city is. That's the community in which we find ourselves. Now, what really fascinates me is that Jeremiah gave this advice to the exiles 2,500 years ago. He presented to them the formula for a good city. Build houses, plant gardens. And if you look at it and think about it, you could call this the opportunity side. But the economic side of the city says this: seek the welfare of the city and pray to the Lord on its behalf. That is the community side. I got my words mixed up there. That's the community side. The economic side is the opportunity, welfare. Pray to the Lord on its behalf. That is when we get into caregiving. That's when we care about the person across the street, the person in the slum, the person that doesn't have what we've got. It's when we start to give back some of what we have been blessed so bountifully with. And it all boils down to looking at the person near us and saying, you have worth. You're worthy of anything you can have. You know, it's about friendship. You know when friendship comes into being? It's when somebody pays attention to you. Community exists when a community pays attention not just to some of its people, but to all of its people. And a community treats those people as if they were a treasure. No matter where we find ourselves geographically, no matter where we find ourselves spiritually, no matter where we find ourselves in circumstances that we cannot control, folks, it's incumbent upon us as Christians that we listen to the counsel of Jeremiah when he says to us, build houses, plant gardens, seek the welfare of the community, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. Are we doing all we can to make our little corner of the world a better place? Or is all we do is grumble? I'm good at grumbling. I'll be the first one to admit it. And if you read Facebook, there are people that do more than grumble silently. You know, we've got to quit grumbling. That final passage and pray to the Lord on its behalf. In the 17th century, and I wish Bennett were here this morning, because I was going to get him to read this with his English brogue. But in the 17th century, there was a church built in a little village of Staffordshire in England. And on that church is a plaque. And that plaque reads like this: in the year 1653, when throughout the nation all things sacred were either demolished or profaned, Sir Robert Shirley, Baronet, founded this church, whose singular praise it is to have done the best things in the worst times. That's quite a good thing to say, isn't it? They did the best things in the worst times. Jeremiah, folks, is talking to us. Some of us long for the good old days, but this is where we are, and we cannot change it. We need to realize where we are is a blessing in and of itself, that God has put us here, and He's put us here for a reason. And if we listen to Jeremiah, we know the reason. Jeremiah tells us what it is. We're here to plant our feet, to dig in, to seek the welfare of the community in which we find ourselves, both our church, our city, our country, and the world. And we are to do the best thing we can do, even though it might be the worst of times. Jeremiah was 2,500 years ago. God's words rolled across those 25 years. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.